In this song, they sound a lot like the Smiths, Gun Club, the Breaking Hands. There's that Bates Hotel-looking pond. So the one thing that we need to understand about the police, and I've talked about the police a lot, is Jesus was actually giving, he was given all his information from his father, but he was giving out survival tips. They were like survival instructions to his followers, that you are to carry the armor an extra mile. So really, to be honest, when it comes to someone like an authority figure or, anyone like police officers and things like that, I think the first thing that Jesus was trying to tell his followers was, these people are very dangerous. Okay? They carry a lethal sidearm. They're sworn to that. And his followers didn't. So there's a survival thing that Jesus was teaching. He was kind of a survivalist in a way. And, like you look at Charlie Manson and things like that, the thing is they get a little warped because then they become vigilantes and like soldiers, because a kitchen knife can be a lethal weapon, Well, I don't know if they use a kitchen knife, but they use cords, and they kind of, like electric cords from lamps and things like that. So they became militant. And I think he started reading the Bible, but then he kind of, his idea was he wanted to start carrying lethal weapons. And he wanted his followers to carry lethal weapons. And then they did the devil's business. So the devil's soldiers and stuff like that, they'll carry lethal weapons. Christians, pretty much just like a staff and a robe. Everybody else pretty much evil. Welcome to this Please Subscribe show. So Daniel Johnston was born
True love will find.
Believe it or not, Daniel Johnston was born in January 22nd of 1961. In January 22nd of 1961.
Of hope, and I'm at the end of my rope. It's so tough just to be alive.
What I thought was interesting about his death was he died on September 11th of 2019. He was an American singer-songwriter. Some people say he was folk. Some are even crazy enough to say that he was punk. He did hang out with some punk people. Two of the main bands that he hung out with were half Japanese.
2, 3, 4. It didn't work out like I had planned it, but it did work. Better than I thought it would.
They were big in supporting him and making sure that he became famous. And I guess Sonic Youth. outsider of the music scene. He actually walked on to an episode of MTV. He just walked up and he allowed them to record him. And he promoted an album that he wrote called Hi, How Are You? Daniel's IQ was higher than anyone of the 1980s. He was actually a genius. Most of Daniel Johnston's recordings were done on tape cassette by one of those cheap tape cassette players you can buy like at Target or whatever. Well, anyway, he made most of his albums at home in like a private room. I don't know if there was a basement in his home. I think there might have been, or something similar. But he recorded everything. Oh, cool, airplane. At home in like a private room. I don't know if there was a basement in his home. I think there might have been, or something similar. But he recorded everything. Oh, cool, airplane. Hi, How Are You was actually recorded on tape cassettes. One thing Daniel Johnston did before Shepard Fairey, before Adam the Woo, before Jordan the Lion, and before any other person that was involved in the music industry, is he reproduced or he re-recorded tape cassettes over and 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 over again. So he made re-recordings and recorded things over and over. So he reproduced these cassette tapes. He recorded them over and over again. So he made copies. He made copies of these cassette tapes. And just like business cards, he handed them out at his favorite place of employment. I don't know if it was his favorite, but was McDonald's. So he worked at McDonald's. One time my aunt Suzette, she said, if you work at McDonald's, I'll pay for your cell phone. I'll pay for everything. This was out when I was living in Long Beach. Never understood that. I worked for McDonald's for 2 hours one time. Anyway, he worked at McDonald's for a very long time. And so in the bag next to the French fries, you would find a cassette tape of Hi, How Are You? And that's how he advertised himself as a musician in the Austin area. Daniel Johnston's recordings are known to be childlike and a little crazy. Some musicians, like Kurt Cobain, said that Daniel Johnston's work was pure. So Kurt Cobain decided to wear a shirt called Hi, How Are You?
There ain't any love left around. Everybody wearing a frown, waiting for Santa to come to town. You're giving it up
Hi,
so
how are you?
plain.
Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? And it was themed on an episode of MTV. Also, he accepted an award. He accepted an award at an MTV concert, or it was a banquet. It was an MTV award ceremony. It was an MTV award ceremony. And Kurt Cobain was there wearing a shirt that said, Hi, how are you? And everyone flipped out. And Daniel Johnston became an overnight success. And Daniel Johnston became an overnight success. Daniel Johnston was born in Sacramento, California. He died on September 11th in Waller, Texas. Daniel Johnston played piano, keyboard. He also played the guitar, and he was very, very good at the drums. He also played the chord organ. Daniel Johnston was almost pretty much killed by his parents, okay? He was put into mental institution, and they called him bipolar. It could be, he was just a genius like Beethoven or Mozart or whatever. And his music will be heard for a very, very long time. But he was in and out of psychiatric institutions, and he did write a song about Mountain Dew, which I might go get one in a minute if they have it. But he did write a song about Mountain Dew while in a mental institution. Also, Daniel Johnston felt that Texas was controlled by the devil. It was in a song called Spirit Rising, or something like that. Leave a comment.
Spirit World Rising 1990 album.
In a documentary, Jad Fair cried to Daniel Johnston and told him that when I heard your album, he was talking about a certain album, leave a comment if you know the album that Jad Fair from Half Japanese was talking to him about. He started crying and said that his music was like the best music he had ever heard. And Jad Fair ended up taking him to New York, and that's where he did some concerts live in certain, coffee bars and things like that. And then he got in trouble, nearly arrested for drawing Christian fish inside the internal aspect, what am I talking about? And the internals, the innards of the Statue of Liberty. So he went inside the Statue of Liberty and he drew Christian fish. And they said, listen, this is going to be a big fine. And I guess the police got a hold of him and said, you have to wash this fish. You gotta wash this fish out of the Statue of Liberty, all these fishes. Pilot's like, you're on the Please Subscribe show, passengers. Yay! Pilot's like, you're on the Please Subscribe show, passengers. Yay! Daniel Johnston was a genius, and his music was almost as good as mine. In a documentary, Jad Fair cried to Daniel Johnston and told him that when I heard your album, he was talking about a certain album, leave a comment if you know the album that Jad Fair from Half Japanese was talking to him about. He started crying and said that his music was like the best music he had ever heard. And Jad Fair ended up taking him to New York, and that's where he did some concerts live in certain, coffee bars and things like that. And then he got in trouble, nearly arrested for drawing Christian fish inside the internal aspect, what am I talking about? And the internals, the innards of the Statue of Liberty. So he went inside the Statue of Liberty and he drew Christian fish. And they said, listen, this is going to be a big fine. And I guess the police got a hold of him and said, you have to wash this fish. You gotta wash this fish out of the Statue of Liberty, all these fishes. I like his song about space ducks. So Daniel Johnston was also a cartoonist and went to France. He actually went to Paris, France. And he told someone in a cab when he was driving around, he said, I wish I could have become a famous cartoonist. And so he would draw all these different types of cartoons all the time. Mostly of these different weird images of ducks. And he drew an image of a man with a hollowed out head. That weird stuff was coming out of his head. And so he drew these several cartoons, and now they're worldwide famous, and most of his artwork is probably in the tens and 20,000s of dollars, and then eventually will be like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And maybe one day his artwork will be like Pollock, because he's a pop art hero. Like he's considered pop art. Like he would have hung out with Andrew, the guy. You could talk to God on the phone. Andy Warhol, he would probably have been at the type to be at the factory. Although he wasn't at the factory, he was in Austin, so I don't want to confuse you. He never went to the factory, okay? Came close to it. But he did hang out with Jad Fair in New York. And he also hung out in Austin and worked at McDonald's. He did this for a very long time, and then he eventually just kicked back on a bunch of lithium, got real fat, sat in front of the television, and wrote poems, and he also wrote songs about Lori. He was obsessed with this lady named Lori or something like that. I don't know her full name. Leave a comment. But he went around with a video camera, videotaping her constantly. And then he got her to say that she loved him on the video recording. And he thought that was like a really cool thing. And this was when he was in college. And so he did this constantly. And I don't think he ever married or had a family or anything. But he was worth about $1 million or so right before his death. And he's worth more now. And to sum it all up, I haven't bought many movies on digital like, like Amazon, or you can buy movies on Voodoo or Voodoo or Vada, Voodoo, okay, Voodoo. There's another place you can buy movies at. It used to be Google Play Movies, but they switched it over to YouTube. And then, of course, Apple. You can buy movies off Apple. I haven't bought a lot of digital movies. I plan to buy more because you can travel more with digital movies. So if you buy digital movies. But one good movie to buy is The Devil and Daniel Johnston. It was a 2005 documentary called The Devil and Daniel Johnston. So The Devil and Daniel Johnston is a very good documentary, 2005. So the director of The Devil and Daniel Johnston is Jeff Feuerzig. It was produced by Henry S. Rosenthal. The actual cinematographer was Procopio. The editor of the movie was Tyler Hubby. The Devil and Daniel Johnston. The movie was distributed by Sony Pictures. Guy's a butthole right there. I guess. In a hurry. March 31st, 2006, Sundance Festival honored The Devil and Daniel Johnston. And it was there, and it exploded, and it became a very, very good documentary. The running time is 116 minutes, and I highly recommend it. Guy's a butthole, too. Like, pulled up right on my bumper, too. Big time butthole. I recommend it. It's a very good documentary. And that's all I have to say about Daniel Johnston right now. Sad that he died, but oh well. It happens to everybody. And all you English majors and people that are picky about pronunciation, Daniel Johnston. Okay? Johnston. Okay? I know. All right, you got your way. Johnston. Daniel Johnston. Right? It's pronounced, okay? It's done. You understand. You get the point. Okay? All right. I kind of like when it's kind of horizontal like that, you know? Anyway, so, I mean, if you know any other information about Daniel Johnston, then leave it in a comment and then other people can learn. But don't leave a comment like, you know, get a real job and things like that. You know, don't tell other people what to do because that's just rude, okay? I'm currently out there doing my thing. I'm not sitting there, you know, I'm not sitting there criticizing you for being on YouTube and insulting someone else, right? So you're insulting somebody else. I'm not criticizing you for doing that, so stop criticizing me. Do unto others as you would be done unto you. I'm not even in this guy's thing. Maybe he's a fan. Maybe he watches it on a little television, like doing his Flying J diesel truck. They're driving in another lane and honking. I'd even do this right here. Daniel Johnston also liked Kool-Aid. He was a big fan of Kool-Aid and pickles. He liked to eat pickles. Chad Fair did kind of like a documentary, home video documentary thing of them, probably somewhere on the planet. I would probably say maybe it was probably maybe Texas area or something. And he invites Daniel Johnston over, and they're just sitting there like eating some kind of sandwich, like some type of sandwiches. Pretty cool motorcycle, but my gosh, I don't know if you saw that, he slipped by on a motorcycle. And Jad Fair was one of the lead singers, or the lead singer of half Japanese. I don't know if I always talked this way before the assault or after. I probably somewhere in there. I can still do Shakespeare and stuff. It's just weird. Anyway, sorry about the method. But yeah, they hung out and filmed this long documentary. They planned shots. Actually, Daniel Johnston was real methodical about where the camera, was to be placed when they were making this documentary. And he cried while he was singing a song about Jesus on the piano. Or really, it was about playing cards with the devil. I thought it was about Jesus. I don't know if Jesus is mentioned. I have to go back and watch, but he sang this song and started crying about. He really cried too. He was really crying. It was about don't play cards with the devil or something like that. Spirit World Rising, I think, was the name of that other song that he talks about Abilene and the devil has Texas. I think it's called Spirit World Rising. And that one's actually really one of my favorite ones. If you ever listen to a few of the versions of that particular song, it's way better than a lot of music even nowadays. It really is music even nowadays. I mean, Nirvana, like if you listen to some Kurt Cobain stuff, like I personally, I don't really like to listen to a lot of commercially sound, even punk bands or indie rock bands or, alternative rock bands or, any type of band, country. It can be any type of music. It can be any type of rock and roll, anything. I don't like it when it sounds too commercial or studio driven. Yeah. Talking Heads were really good in the studio. So was Queen and a few other bands. But I think the studio, like for example, Sharon Van Etten, she's better like on NPR and recording live. So he didn't have a real studio sound. Now he did record some really good songs in the studio. Some of his really popular songs, like Life is Vain or whatever, leave a comment. The Life is Vain song was in a studio. It was recorded in a studio too. And then he had other versions of it where it was recorded just from a tape player. But he always had a real sound, and he always recorded, pretty much just from like a tape player. And since I've been listening to Daniel Johnston for a while, I like musicians on SoundCloud where it sounds like they're just recording, from their apartment or from like a bathroom, just like using their own mic. I think that's the best kind of music. I think the studio sound, it sounds too expensive. I remember one time when I was listening to the Smashing Pumpkins, I told my friend, I said, they sound kind of expensive. They use a lot of studio equipment, a lot of studio time. But I don't think the Smashing Pumpkins always needed to sound, that studio. A lot of bands sound too studio. There's too much. The producers kind of make it sound too commercial. And they lose the essence of where the music comes from. It comes from a person, just playing their instrument and singing. You lose a lot of it because they're so driven to make tons and tons of money, billions of dollars or whatever, Now, David Bowie, he did do some recordings where he used a crappy mic, and those are some of his best stuff. He's got a crappy mic, and he's with like a friend, like sitting on a bed or something, the Mercury recordings, for example. So you can be a musician and just have like a tape player, any type of recording device. It could be a phone, and you can just record. And sometimes people appreciate that more than the studio sound. And that's what Daniel Johnston shifted things big time. Because he said, I just have a tape player from Walmart or a tape player from a pawn shop or whatever. And he recorded and recorded and recorded, and he created a masterpiece. So as long as you have the ability to record and you're a musician, it doesn't matter the studio quality. It doesn't even matter if you're popular or not. Remember, he wasn't popular when he started off. You're a musician when you play. When you start to play the music, then you're a musician. And it's that way until you stop playing. You are what you do.
to me? And where am I going to? I gotta really try so hard to get by. And where am I going to? I don't know where is up or down, and there ain't any love left around. Everybody wearing a frown, waiting for Santa to come to town.